Wednesday, August 5th. The time is 5:40 p.m. and the temperature is 24 degrees Celsius. The plan for this walk is to walk up here to Queen Street East, where I'll turn right and walk along Queen Street through the downtown portion of Queen Street East over to Broadview Avenue, where the Broadview Hotel is. This is Yonge Street I'm currently walking north on. And to the left would be Queen Street West, but I'll be turning right onto Queen Street East. Here at the intersection of Queen and Yonge, there is Queen Station, which serves Line 1, the Yonge Street portion of the city's subway system. And this is Victoria Street I am approaching. Just up here on the left is St. Michael's Hospital. Which apparently has one of, if not the busiest emergency room in downtown Toronto. The emergency entrance is a block to the north, just on the right. I have had to use it before when I broke my finger at a softball game. And it sounds like there's an emergency vehicle probably making its way to St. Mike's. Looks like a Toronto fire vehicle. Oh, it's turning off down Yonge Street. That would be some fire trucks way off in the distance. Probably going to the same place. And this here on the left is the Metropolitan United Church. This is a neo-Gothic style church. According to the sign here, it was commissioned on May 7th, 1873. It looks like it's sprung a mini tent city on the church grounds. And this next street I'll be approaching is Church Street, but it's not named after this or one of the other churches located to the north of here, but it's named after the St. James Cathedral, which is a few blocks to the south at King and Church Street. That was actually the first church built in the city of Toronto, or York as it was known. And that's where this street gets its name from. The original St. James Cathedral, which you might be able to see the top of, has burnt down, so that is the replacement that's become quite famous here in the city. And just down there on the left is Henry's, which is probably the most popular camera shop in the city of Toronto, and right next to it is Downtown Camera. Much like the walk I did along King Street East about a week and a half or so, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Queen Street East certainly has its share of older buildings with a lot of history. I'll have to come back at some point and do a more informational walk about them, as I certainly have a lot of homework to do. Most of these older buildings do date back to somewhere around the mid-1800s. There's a boarded up pawn shop, but there isn't, usually when you see something like that, there's a sign for what type of redevelopment will be happening on that property, but over there it's nothing, so it could just be a abandoned storefront. And right up here is Jarvis Street, which means we're entering the Moss Park neighborhood. Which has a bit of a reputation for not being the safest part of the city of Toronto, even though I've never felt particularly unsafe there. But we'll be passing through. And on the northeast corner there is the Moss Park Armory. Maybe I'll cross over and take a closer look at it. Sorry. Looks like that light doesn't want to change anytime soon. Certainly no shortage of interesting characters around here. There's a look at the armory. I believe the facade was replaced at some point over the last decade. That's currently the home of active military reserves for various legs of the Canadian Armed Forces. And just up here on the left is Moss Park itself. Which has been in the news lately for the tent city that's popped up here. I did a walk from around here north through the park a few weeks ago. Certainly not the park you want to take the kids to for a relaxing afternoon. And one of the concerning things, I'm not trying to imply anything, but this little settlement straight ahead seems to have a number of bicycles in front of it. And the city does have a rampant bike theft problem. So I suspect those aren't the original owners of those bikes hanging out around here. Should probably make my way back down to Queen Street before people start to wonder why there's a nut job wandering around with a camera talking to himself. One of the contributing factors to all of the homeless and drug addicts in this particular part of town is that there is a safe injection site right around the corner from here. It originally started as a tent, something of a temporary measure, but they've since found a more permanent home, and they've received the go-ahead from various government officials to continue operating. There's certainly a lot of mixed feelings about that. There's also been talk of clearing out the tent city in the park in the news. I'm not sure under what legal grounds they can do that. It does speak to the lack of affordable social housing in the city and other types of public housing services. Speaking of which, that Moss Park Armory we walked by has recently been used as a temporary homeless shelter on the colder days in the winter. Previously, the mayor of Toronto, John Tory, was not supporting or supportive of that idea. But a couple of years ago, we had a few particularly cold days where he received federal permission to go ahead and use it as a homeless shelter in the winter months. And this coming up is the somewhat infamous intersection of Queen and Sherbourne. And I believe the safe injection site is on this block right here, just down there to the right. And where that shawarma restaurant is, used to be a bar called The Libertarian, where there was a murder which occurred in the patio space, and since that day, that bar has ceased to operate, or ceased operating. It's probably not the crowd of people I should take this camera for a walk in front of. That's looking north on Sherbourne Street. Looks like the lighting will be a bit better on the other side of the street, so I'll cross over in a minute. This is still considered part of the Moss Park neighborhood, which is part of Division 51, which I think is or suffers from the most crime in the city of Toronto overall, at least statistics-wise. And here's something of a landmark. If you're familiar with the CBC program Kim's Convenience, which is also on Netflix. This is the store that has the same name and serves as the exterior for the TV show. Certainly they film it in a studio, but that's what it looks like on the outside at least. That's the 501 Queen Street streetcar. It's one of the longest and busiest streetcars in the city of Toronto. It's a very frequent service. It runs all the way from Long Branch on Etobicoke across the city, and this will take you through the beaches and into, I believe it turns around near the R.C. Harris water treatment plant. I might be wrong on that. There you go, let's get out of the shade. And it's pretty much a 24-hour streetcar because at night they operate the 301, which is the Blue Night service. So soon we'll be entering the northern part of the Corktown neighborhood, which I talked a little bit about in my King Street East walk. Here's an old church. Looks like it's an event hall now. So this coming up is Parliament Street. So if you head north, that'll take you up through the Cabbagetown neighborhood. And to the south, it'll lead you down towards the Distillery District. One thing you've probably noticed about this part of Queen Street is there's not a whole lot of gentrification happening, even though just a few blocks to the south along King Street and parts of Adelaide and Richmond and Front Street, there is plenty of that going on. There's a lot more Starbucks and chain locations and higher end retail shops. as well as loft conversions and new condos. But on Queen Street East, for the most part, has seemed to avoided that. St. Paul's Basilica Parish. Gathered in faith since 1822, so that must make it one of the older churches in the city, since St. James was founded in 1807. There's a homeless center right there, the Good Shepherd Ministries. And there's a look at St. Paul Catholic School. Really just reading names off buildings at this point. This street here is Sackville. You can take this north up to Cabbagetown. It's one of the nicer streets that runs through Cabbagetown. Well, they're all pretty nice up in that neighborhood. And this building here is known as Dominion Square. It used to be the home of a brewery that went by the name Dominion. It dates back to the 1800s. I think 1878 is when that building first opened. It's now occupied by various tenants. One of the main tenants in the front, I believe, is an audio-visual store called VizTech. I might be way off on that. Here's some older row homes on the right. These most likely date back to the 1800s. There it is, VizTech, photo, digital, video. Looks like if you need some high-end equipment, that might be the place to go. Some of these streets certainly have a bit of a Cabbagetown feel to them. Where this Dominion Pub and Kitchen is, used to be the Dominion Hotel. And this is Sumac Street, which, much like Sackville, will run up to Cabbagetown. These are one-way streets, and I believe they change directions a few times on the way just to prevent cars from taking them as a way to circumvent the major streets from going north to south, as they are primarily residential streets. And these have to be very old. I'm looking for some type of plaque. Often on heritage properties in the city of Toronto, there will be a plaque that kind of commemorates them. It gives you some dates and information. It's certainly an older style of row houses in Toronto. A bit of a nightmare if you're an insurance agent or adjuster going to insure them. You have no idea what kind of things lurk in those walls. Do they still have the older style knob and tube wiring? Maybe they have aluminum wiring. If it was upgraded sometime in the 70s, which is a fire concern. Maybe they don't have firewalls between the units, which means if one unit catches fire, you're pretty much losing the entire thing. So while a lot of these older buildings are quite pretty to look at, if they haven't been thoroughly gutted and updated, there can definitely be concerns from a loss and safety perspective. And with a lot of the larger buildings, of course, you have to deal with potential asbestos exposures and things like that. So this here is River Street. Straight ahead is the Regent Park neighborhood. And that is King Street, just to the south of here. And this here is the Toronto Humane Society. There's a lot of interesting artwork of various animals you'd have as a pet on the side. So this would be considered the edge of downtown Toronto. It's often said that it runs out to the Don River, which is what we're about to walk over. These buildings here are part of the Canary District. They were originally built to be athlete housing for the Pan Am Games, which Toronto hosted. And right here is where King and Queen Street, or where King Street merges into Queen Street. So this is the end of King Street. And this bridge here is known as the Queen Street Viaduct. It was originally a wooden bridge, built sometime in the 1800s, but it's been replaced a few times. And this most recent, I believe, was sometime in the early 1900s. I used to know that date, but I guess there's only so much room in my brain. That, I believe, is the south end of Broadview Avenue. So there's a look at the Don River. There is a recreational trail which flanks the side of it, which I've ridden my bicycle down in a previous video. I think I did that one on Canada Day. And this highway here is the Don Valley Parkway. That's sort of the major north to south highway on the east end of Toronto. On the west end, there's the 427. So you can actually do a loop of the Toronto highways. You could go down the Gardiner Expressway and up the Don Valley Parkway here to Highway 401. Then you could take that over to, I'm trying to think of what kind of car that is. I think that was a McLaren and a Ferrari. And then you could take the 427 down to the Gardiner and come back here. Might make for an interesting night drive if you have absolutely nothing to do. And this part of town we're entering, I'll save for a future narrated walk. It's known as Leslieville. And then beyond Leslieville is the Toronto Beaches neighborhood, where I recorded a video from there that went up on Monday. And if you were to continue further on into Leslieville, you would certainly notice a lot more gentrification, so to speak, in terms of the types of businesses you'll see. There's a lot more condo development in this area.
Somebody else already bought.
Drugs. Oh, yeah, right. Like drugs, right?
Someone's talking about drugs. Just a lot of new condos back there. Some of them are so new they're not even incorporated yet. In fact, I posted a picture on my new Instagram page, not that this is a plug for that. And it was overlooking the Broadview Hotel, and it was taken from one of these condos right here on a street called Baseball Place that doesn't yet have a City of Toronto street sign. It's probably not even a legal street yet. So you can see the neighborhood itself is already something of a night and day difference from where this walk started. And coming up here on the left is the Broadview Hotel. It's a 58-room boutique hotel. It began life originally as a hotel back in 1893, but it later was converted into a boarding house with a strip club on the main floor known as Jilly's. It was something of a neighborhood institution in this area. And then sometime over the past decade, it was purchased and refurbished, and they closed the strip club and built this hotel in its place, or opened the new Broadview Hotel in its place. There's quite a nice patio on the rooftop there, from what I understand. And this is Broadview Avenue, so you could take this north up past Riverdale Park and to Greektown, passing through East Chinatown on the way. And that's the 504 streetcar, that's the 504B, so that'll go over to Dufferin Gate. So I think I'll end this walk here. Thanks for watching. There are links to Instagram and my Patreon account in the description. If you have any comments or feedback, leave them below. I always look forward to reading them. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay safe out there.